Thank you for coming to the podcast, team. Andrea, you're very welcome. Thanks for the time. So let's start. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about your work, please?
Sure. Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, go ahead. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me and for having us and for having Exotools. My name is Andrea Maiolo. I've been working in the computer graphics industry for the past 25 years. You guys can't see me, otherwise you'll see that I have gray hair. I'm getting an old man. And I worked for many years in the fax industry. I worked in places like ILM and Digital Domain. I also worked at Disney for a while. I worked at Square back in the days on the Final Fantasy. That was one of the first animated movie that was trying to portray a character in a realistic manner. After that, with Tim, I opened our first company that was called KMD, Creature Art and Mechanics. We did a bunch of products. Chad Vernon was one of our partners. I believe that was one of the guests of this podcast a while back.
Yes, but this year, yeah.
Yeah. So we did that. And for the past few years, Tim and I have been working on EXO Tools that is specialized in consulting for rigging, animation, and pipeline. That is my introduction in a nutshell. It's your turn, Tim.
Okay. Well, I envy Andrea because he's been doing this for a long time and his hair went gray, but I lost my hair doing this. So I've been a little bit shorter, 20 years, and I had hair when I started. I know that part. So you can't see me, but maybe I blind everyone for my bald head. But I basically got to ILM and was lucky enough to sit next to Andrea in the training department at ILM, and that's how we met. And I think we've worked almost every day since 2001, except for maybe a year or two here and there. And been in the visual effects industry, worked at ILM for a while, worked at Digital Domain for a little while. And then, like Andrea said, a bunch of us started Creature Art and Mechanics. We did that for about 5 years. And then we sold that company. And then Andrea and I, throughout, even before KMD, always had an interest in kind of tool development to help animators, help rigging TDs and pipeline. So that's kind of the start of where Exotools came out of. And then we've focused on one product, which is, our bidirectional constraint, and trying to figure out how to kind of crack the code on some challenges that as an industry, we as rigging TDs and animators still have, and trying to dive into figuring out, is there a way to tackle some of those challenges. So it's been a great run. I'm not doing movies right now, but I do miss doing film. So I've been lucky enough to do some really fun projects and hang out with Andrea, which is always fun too. So thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. I mean, I remember you contact me. I was thinking to contact you in some point, and then I received an email from Andrea, and it was like, yes, perfect. Because I was like, I really appreciate it, and I was really happy to have you here. So yeah, it's a very long career and very interesting. I guess you've been in many projects. I saw you been in like big blockbusters like Pirates of Caribbean and I don't big ones also. I don't remember the others.
Yeah,
but like,
we did a bunch of Star Wars movies. We worked on Transformer, on the first old Hulk, the one that was whining all the time, the whiny Hulk movie.
the Steven Spielberg, the one that directed Steven Spielberg.
No, the one that Ang Lee directed.
It was Ang Lee?
It was Ang Lee, yeah, and Hulk was always sad. Hulk is supposed to smash, and in that movie was always
really
it was always miserable because He was big and green. Nobody loved him. So we worked on that one. Yeah, we worked on a bunch of big projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was confusing like Transformer with Hulk. Shame on me. Yeah, the Langley one. I remember that one. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So in the so you now your work is mainly to give like consulting services and very specialized like development to your clients to like to help with the specific situations or challenge that they have. That's correct.
That's right. We're basically getting hired by companies that needs specific character work or character tools. We mostly these days we don't really do production. Sometimes here and there we actually work on assets, but most of the time we don't do the typical character TD work where we don't paint skin weights or that sort of stuff. We generally write tools for them or advise them on the best practice, or maybe we help them solve one of their problems.
That's really cool. For me, that's the great part of our work is when you are on that stage that you need to come with new solutions and new creative ways to solve problems. And then when it's solved, I think it's for me at least it's only repeating when you have one with the solution for a project, and you need to do it over and over, and then it becomes maybe a little repetitive and boring.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting though that you say that, Miguel? Because that's some of the discovery that we've had in doing this is that there's so many clients that need the exact same thing, and it seems to be missing at times from this piece of software or that piece of software. So it's really fascinating how many times we've written certain tools for different clients, just changed them a little bit here and there, kind of accomplish the same thing. And then we've experienced some really odd times where, for example, out of the blue, we got contacted by a robotics company and said, "Hey, we're having a problem with some IK stuff. It's a Maya plugin. Can you guys grab a look?" And we weren't able to solve it exactly. They were able to figure it out, but we kind of helped along the way test things out for them. And so we've that was one of the more unique aspects. But what we're discovering is that there's still certain states in the industry of doing certain things a certain way that people are trying to figure out how to optimize or package together, especially if they're a small, medium to smaller size boutique shop that want larger tool sets or frameworks, and they just don't have the resources. They don't want to bring the people on to do it and then have to support them post project. So we've been convenient for some people. I would hope that they see it that way, that we can kind of come in, do what needs to be done, and then extract ourselves back out.
I think there is a need for, especially what you said, like a mid-size or boutique studios. They don't have the resources, or they don't want to have it, like to have like R&D team and people very specialized in one situation, that they need this expertise from someone else to provide, because if not, they're gonna be it's gonna be hard for them to reach qualities that they need to reach to be competitive on the market.
Exactly. So we don't have a lot of large studios contacting us, maybe every once in a while about some project or some potential technology that we've had. But it's mainly that small to medium boutique size that we're kind of a crack creature development team for them, which has been nice because we can bring a scalable perspective. Working at places like ILM and DD for a long amount of time, you kind of get trained towards large production and scalability, and bringing that perspective into a smaller studio is always seems to be a welcome thing.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was saying, like, we had the chance to have a bunch of big clients. They tend to have different needs. Like, for instance, we worked for Autodesk for a while, and that was interesting too, because it takes you out of your comfort zone and allow you to stretch your your brain and your knowledge. So I enjoy it, working for large clients as well, from time to time. That's what I want to say.
You work for Humane.
Yeah, we
great.
did.
Great people.
Yeah, I know Greg. It's a
great. We used to work with him at ILM. It's a very small world and even smaller industry.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's very small world. Yeah, really. Yeah. Especially if we like center on like in 3D it's small, in CG it's small, but if you niche down to like our work like rigging and character effects and things like that, it's even smaller. It's
even smaller.
It's very exclusive club. No, it's just joking.
Well, in a sense,
anybody can get in the club. It's just small.
Well, it's exclusive because it's small. Not a lot of people wants to do it. That is the big difference.
Yeah, it's hard. It's still hard to do.
Yeah, it is still hard.
Yeah,
that is one of the things that Tim and I were discussing when we decided to talk to you. It's like, what should we talk about it? And the first thing that came up, it was like, after 20 years, it's still hard to do this stuff.
Yes, that's one of the things I was also like wanting to talk with you, because you have way more experience than me, and you see the evolution of this. You see, almost from the beginning, from the build up to today. Yeah. Because this industry is not that old at all. So
can you believe it? I was beta tester of 3D Studio Max 1 and Maya 1.
My God.
And Houdini, I wasn't beta tester of Houdini 1, but I remember when they gave me a demo. I am that old. Because Houdini is older than Max and Maya.
Yeah, it was. Well, I don't remember that back in the days. Oh my God. I was. I mean, if I have to date myself, I started with 3DS, but not the Max.
I used that one too.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I jumped to Softimage, so it was like.
There you go.
Not
we used 3D. That one too. Because at ILM, when Tim and I started, it was all Softimage 3D. Mm-hmm. So we became expert.
Yeah, it was great. I remember it was amazing, and I mean, compared.
I remember when they gave me the demo of XSI, that before you had a different name, it was called something like Twister or something.
Yes. Yeah, it was Twister, the code name. I remember. Yeah. Yeah. And it was funny. Except the first Windows version. Oh my God, that was horrible. It was crashing all the time. I think I broke one mouse just because I just threw it against the wall and just exploded.
Untold number of keyboards and mice died.
Yeah. It was kind of fun now with the distance in time, no? Not that.
Yeah. It's great to look back. I have more fond memories than frustrating memories. But to your point about the evolution, it's very interesting to see what was very fascinating to me was the moment Maya came out and really started with scriptability, and then it started, becoming infused into the schools as new schools that really just focused on computer animation started to become a mainstream alternative for younger students. It was really fascinating to see the level and quality of what students were able to produce. That was a really interesting evolution to watch. It's like the baseline coming out of these schools was what was almost impossible to achieve, with a power animator or Softimage at times. So it was really great. It was really great. I mean, there were so many students that I could have learned from. Said, well, how did you do that? Because there's always new parts of rigging. I don't think anyone can encompass all of their knowledge, say they know everything about rigging, right? There's always a new way to do it or a new thought process behind it. So it's a really fun, discoverable job. And watching students come up with great solutions in school was like, okay, this is starting to mature. I'm starting to feel really old. Maybe it's time to bow out gracefully and let the kids take over, let the youngins take over.
What you forgot to mention, Tim, that you've been an instructor at Full Sail. And so that exposed you to a lot of, young people coming up and having new ideas and using tools in a different way. I bet that was fascinating when you were there.
Yeah, they just start at a different foundational level than what we started with. And it gives them a chance to leap forward in getting to, and what I've noticed is a lot of them rig really complex things in a super smart, engineered way, very, very creative. But we haven't, I don't believe, as an industry, found other ways to remove complexity. And sometimes I think there was a time where complexity was like almost the cool thing to have in your rigs. I would almost like to see more.
Yes, I agree with that.
Solutions, so it's been an interesting evolution for sure.
Yeah, I remember it was one point in a time that was like all the demo reels that you can see was about to add in new features and new options, and was super long demos showing all the like little details that you can do with the rig.
Right.
And I think nowadays, of course, everything is like more standardized quotes there in terms of everybody has IKFK and things like that, like the basics. So it's understood that you will have it. And yeah, there's other innovative ways that I think it's interesting, like maybe the deformation side also. It's also like pay more attention now than before. And for me, it's very important also when you see especially when you see like a demo reel for a rigger. For me, right nowadays, if the rig is great, but the deformation is so-so, I'm probably less impressed than the other way around. Maybe the rig is very simple, but the deformation is great, the appealing is great of the character. That's I think it's way more difficult nowadays than achieve the complexity on the rig.
Agreed. Yeah, I really do. Because you're right, it did become, on the demo reel side, from students coming out of school, way more boilerplate, if you will, that all of the features that we were trying to figure out back in the day kind of have become standardized. How they're implemented might be different, but to your point, the FKIK switching and all of that, but how you deform something is still hard. It's still hard, right? To do well.
Yes. Yeah, still that's really hard.
The difference I see though is that in deformation, at least on a company level, the people always end up writing their own deformers, or they purchase stuff from third-party vendors. There are a lot of alternatives. At least I've seen people exploring a lot of alternatives. Every place where I work, they have like 6 or 7 custom deformers to solve the problem they have. A rigging point of view, I haven't seen a lot of places that have their own IK solver, or their own spine solver, or their own skeleton, or it is much more limited. They are expecting much more people to get whatever result is expected with the tool they have. I remember working on the second Star Wars, and I had to rig a couple of those creatures in the arena. And I was doing that with Softimage 3D, but it was just like pain and suffering, because, like, for instance, I had to rig the muscles. They were in the creature, and the muscle were actually geometry in Softimage 3D. And for every single muscle, I had to create this kind of piston kind of rig that will actually stretch and compress it. But there was no scripting. So I had to keep doing the same movement again and again and again, and put them all over the body, and then start moving it around and make sure that the movement was reasonable. Nobody, said like, oh, this is not a good way of spending time. Let's write, a system that actually does that. From a rigging point of view, in a sense, is still that. Recently, I counted the big main changes that have been, introducing in Maya rigging since 1998, and I couldn't come up with a lot of them. I mean, they created small improvement, like they added the pairing constraint that wasn't there in Maya 1. They also added the offsets to the constraint. They added that multi-chain solver. How's it called? The spring solver.
Yeah, yeah, the spring solver.
They add the rivet constraint, which is a constraint, but it's kind of like a self-constraint, and that's pretty much it. I mean, to do a long chain that actually behave properly, you still have to create so many nodes and stuff if you don't create your own, your own solution. So
yeah, I agree with that.
and that's just an example. I mean, to these days, you can still not do a KFK switching in a smooth, simple way. So there are things that, I mean, most characters have stretchy limbs, and there is still not, there should be a button that does it after 20 years.
Yeah, I think, it's around the corner, some big improvements right now with the Bifrost, the board. I think I'm very looking forward for the new iterations on this tool, because I think it's going to be very powerful, this new technology. But yes, it's not there yet. I mean, it's
the advantage of Bifrost is well, the first thing is that the biggest difference is that it has a compiler under the hood. So when you wire together all these nodes, it actually compiles, then it makes one node that actually works more efficiently. That is the big secret sauce. The rest is that there are a lot of very simple nodes that do very simple operation, and the data structure actually allow you to wire them a little bit more freely without having to worry much of how you're wiring them. The rest is basically icing on the cake, because the UI itself could be put on top of anything else. So I think the other thing that is nice about Bifrost is that it is easy to create these compounds, basically to package all these nodes and make them look like is one, which is something that Maya does, but not as elegantly. There isn't an easy way to say, like, save it, load it. So I think that the big advantage would be if people start making this big basically is visual programming, right? People wire together these sets of very primitive nodes and then make compounds, and then put these compounds on some server or some depot where people can go and get them, or maybe they get shipped with Maya directly, for instance. That will make a difference.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's the idea from Autodesk, but honestly, I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's very yeah, but it's true that in general, like if we right now, it didn't change that much. The paradigm didn't change in terms of, but also the rigging, but also the way that we input on the rigging also, I think it's still there. Like we use now probably like a Synquit or like a pen tablets and things like that. But it's still using the same gizmos, like the rotate, the scale, translate. The paradigm on manipulation, it's still also the same, or very, very close to what we have like 20 years ago, almost.
The posing is very.
Go ahead.
Well, the interesting about in our development of the bidirectional constraint, one of the largest conclusions we came to is the math behind creating a posable, intuitive system is one thing. The moment you need to integrate that into the animation engine, everything breaks. And so we developed it, and we developed it almost like the wrong way, where we realized, when we didn't consider enough of how the animation and sliding time sliders around and the evaluation issues and callback constructs within Maya were going to work for us and then work against us in different ways. We actually thought, well, let's get it to pose first, thinking that would be the simpler case, and it was. But when you don't plan for how the animation engine kind of changes everything, it can be really difficult to create new kind of rigging constructs that do certain things. Because the moment you move time, it's almost like Maya hands off evaluation in a totally different paradigm that you don't have real good control over anymore. So that was something interesting about the difference between posability and playability, and developing tools where sometimes it might be better to engineer them from the onset as playable, and the posing is just kind of icing on the cake. That was something that we that was a really difficult, hard. A lot of people ask, well, why did it take you guys so long to do this? Well, we had day jobs. And then we had children. So that's two good and healthy excuses.
Yeah.
So the third one that's more rigging specific is wrangling the handoff between the Maya posing manipulation engine and the animation engine are really two different languages. It's like you're speaking English and then you're speaking, Japanese. You don't even have the same alphabet in a way, right? It becomes very difficult to kind of do a healthy handoff.
I see the point. It's very like when you manipulate the rig, it's one thing, but when you evaluate and you want all the data that you input through your manipulation to be evaluated as a movement, it's different. It's kind of like two separated like ways to interpret the data.
Right. And that's what and some of the things behind the way that we did this constraint is that we had to create our own data framework that is agnostic to Maya in order to handle it well. So building your own interpolation engine, if you will, behind the scenes of Maya became a real that's one of the reasons why we came to this conclusion of like, oh my gosh, I don't know, like we did all this work to get this bidirectional posing where you can just add pivots and do all this cool stuff to make it super intuitive for the animator, and then we hit play and we kind of went
so you start like not relying on the evaluation system of Maya, but you create your own graph internally for your tool, and then just give Maya the data. Say, okay, do this, and this. And
and that data framework was really a unique programming experience to be able to. It kept evolving in terms of like, well, I think the data structure should look like this. This is how we need to interface with it. This is how we need to operate it. This is how we would interpolate. And then all of a sudden, you would realize that Maya requires more. If they move backward in time, if they move, if they slide forward in time, or if they, how do you open it? How do you save it? So that's some of the reasons why it took so long to develop. Is really, it wasn't more, the posing was one thing, but writing your own behind the scenes evaluation aspect and engine was really a hardcore challenge for us.
And it's not really a graph; it's more like a mixer. There is a data structure that take care of fill up all the information that Maya doesn't store, but then there is this other part that is mixing all the information that is coming from the curves with the information that Maya never stored, and the information that are coming from things that haven't been keyframed. They get mixed together, and then applied, as output of the constraint. So we call it a switch constraint because it allows you to switch between its inputs, but it is also a mixing has a mixing capability because he mix all this information to come out with a plausible result.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The arm and the sword was something that we dealt with on the first Pirates movie. There was a ton of scenes where people were exchanging swords as like their dead selves, and we would spend a ton of time at animators' desks. It was ILM's first show doing animation in Maya, and so we spent a lot of time as tech anim sitting with animators to try to help them bake out a constraint, and then evaluate it differently. And then, this sword goes here, then it gets pivoted from the tip, and then now this, character owns it, and then they give it back. And there was a lot of handoff of props, and it just became really hard. So from a real world perspective, what wound up happening is you would go to an animator's desk and help them do their constraint setup, and they would do their animation. And the next day in dailies, the animation supervisor who doesn't know about their constraint setup would say, no, I needed to do this, and we need to, shift the timing. Well, half of that stuff was baked data. And so it became a real struggle for animators to go back to their desk, destroy, it became very destructive, right? To destroy half of their previous day's constraint setup. And then your phone would ring. Hey, Tim. Hey, Andrea, you helped us out yesterday. I have notes from dailies. Can you come back? And so, I would like to say it was a very symbiotic relationship, but it really wasn't. It was really a one-way. We serve the animators, which is the way it should be.
Okay.
But there was no, the technology at the end of that process didn't improve at all. It was still the same, wash, rinse, repeat of baking out a constraint, then setting up the animation, submitting it, having timing be changed, losing. It was such a lossy effort. And that's some of the premise or inception for the idea of like, can we make it so that you can have multiple pivots that are related to one another, and the animator gets to choose who gets what when. So we got the posing pretty fast, and then everything died when people started keyframing stuff, and we had to go to the drawing board. Like, oh gosh, oh no, someone said a keyframe. What are we gonna do?
Oh no, keyframe. Why? Yeah, I'm big proponent of the T-pose animation. All feature film movie in T-pose, so it's solution.
Right. So it was a hard endeavor.
Yeah. How long? I mean, sorry, I'm not aware of the timeline of this. When was the first inception until you released the tool?
Oh boy. Well, we did a presentation. Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was at Siggraph in 2006.
That's correct. Yep.
In Boston, when it was in Boston, and we had no idea if it was going to work. And so I was doing one part of. We did a 2-part masterclass when they were doing masterclass stuff back at Siggraph, where I was doing the one section of our masterclass that was about, dirty propagation, dependency graph evaluation, how to set up, how Maya thinks of data, views data, the perspective that the developers had on
there was also that matrix math that was interesting. How you build a matrix, what is a Cartesian space, all that stuff.
All that stuff to kind of help TDs who were maybe coming out of school and knew how to click menus, but didn't really understand necessarily the underlying mathematical framework. And Andrea was the one who was kind of bloodying his monitor to see if we could get the constraint to actually work. And we pretty much locked ourselves in a hotel room. I think we left a really healthy tip for the housekeepers because we were there for like 3 days straight. It was crazy. And then the night before our presentation, like 3 or 4 in the morning, I think I saw a tear come down off of his face or something. And then he got it to work. Andrea got it to work. And then we went out to probably the only bar that was open in all of Boston, had a beer together and tried to get out of sleep. And so that was the beginning. It was way back in 2006, and it's been a long haul to get it to work.
Tim
came and that destroyed everything again.
Hey Tim, if I can add a little piece of the story. The thing was that we had a presentation at the last day of Siggraph, and when we got there, it still wasn't working. At that time we were trying to break the fact that a constraint system, or Maya in general, didn't really like to have cycles. Any node network don't like to have cycle. The constraint is intrinsic cycles, because everything is connected exactly the same way, and that's why you can switch who's driving who at any time. But the problem is that then you have to manage this cycle, and we weren't really sure how to do it. So we managed to figure it out at the last minute, as Tim said, at 3 a.m. The class started at 8. But then I think it was a pretty good success. They end up recording the class, and then they made DVDs out of them that were on the out of the store for several years, and they've been quite successful. Someone just like a few months ago asked me if I still had a copy of that material, because they wanted to learn from it.
Yeah, I remember these Autodesk DVDs. It was back then. It was very like each one was a very high level, like professional on his area of expertise, explaining some techniques they use in like big productions back in the day. Yeah, I remember that once. I never bought ones, but I work in a studio that the owner used to both almost every one. I don't know if I saw yours, but I saw a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's some really great content back in the day.
Yeah, at a certain point they were online. So basically, if you had this subscription, you could just go online and download them, or you just pay on the store and you download it. They were downloadable at a certain point where DVD, fell off the grades, and people didn't just have DVD player anymore.
Yeah, but it was that information, remember, was very difficult to learn. I mean, it was in 2006. I mean, I don't know 2006, but early in the days, like early 2000s, the internet was there, of course, but was not that amount of resources online. It was very difficult to get information.
Yeah. Nowadays, I think that even books most of the time are superfluous, because when I'm working, if I need to figure something out, I just Google it, and in 2 seconds I have the answer, no matter what the question is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I sometimes, especially when I'm developing, I R&D is not the word I will use. It's Google and D.
How true. Google and D. How many tabs can you open before Chrome dies on your machine, right?
I don't know. Stack Overflow and D.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't do that things that had super high level or anything. So probably anything I tend to do, it's already done by hundreds of people already. So it's not that difficult for me, unless.
It's pretty amazing to see how the industry's matured with people, willing. That's one of the reasons why we did the masterclass back in those days, is we enjoyed sharing, and then you get to know other people who, do the classes, and they know this trick, and you just kind of try. It was a way to build community back then across studios of people trying to figure out the same, aren't we all up at night trying to figure out the same problem? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
How do we do it? So we had a lot of great people test it out. I saw just one of the slides that came up about, mask, where you could rig the constraint. That was from Brad Clark, who was one of our early beta testers, and said, it'd be really great that if I, when I want to move this controller just in Y, these two controllers would stay put, but this other controller would rotate, or, how could I do that? And that sent us back to the drawing board again. But it was such a wise, insight into how we could improve it, and it sent us, back to the drawing board too. But we got a totally different, constraint. It's very difficult to rig constraints and create behavioral aspects to a node, right? You can't, like, there aren't that many nodes that you can, besides the condition node, but there aren't that many nodes within itself that allow you to create a number of different behavioral scenarios. So that was a unique experience to try to get that into a Maya node structure, without it just being a billion different if statements. Yeah. So a lot of different challenges for sure. I think Andrea, I don't know if, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but I feel like we got to know Maya very well and just rigging more in general because we were trying to tackle all these different issues. Some of them we got right, and other ones we just had to abandon or completely failed, or Maya just slapped us across the face too many times that we just were like, that hurts too much. I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, definitely. If there is one thing that we know quite well at this point is Maya, how it works, and all its little dirty or not dirty secrets, especially when it comes to rigging. One of the things that happened, few years back is that we got it all figured out, everything is working, and then the new dependency graph come out, the parallel mode, the new evaluation engine.
Yes.
And all the little trickery that we had to put in place to go around the fact that dependency graph don't like cycle got flushed down the toilet. So we had to start again and doing it again for the new engine.
Yeah, I know. And in the previous studio I was working, we use a lot of trickery for the dependency graph, especially. We kind of did something similar to, I think was this like article from a guy from Blue Sky that they use this I don't remember how we call it, but basically you split your rig in parts and you evaluate the part by part, but only works when you manipulate. So let's say you when you move the arm, it's only evaluating the arm, and it's not like flagging everything else. So the manipulation is quite fast, but not the playback of the rig. So when you go and play, it's still slow.
It's still slow.
Or you get what you get. I mean, it doesn't need to be slow, but
right.
The trick doesn't work at that point. But it was working on the manipulation stage, because you kind of control where is going your dirty propagation. So if you move the arm, it's not gonna dirty propagate all the rig, no. And it was working nicely for DG, but of course, when it came parallel, it didn't work at all.
All that work. Oh.
Yes, and I have to say, with if I talk about the M gear, I don't know if you know this, the rigging system I do.
Yeah.
I was lucky because the way that the system was designed, it worked perfectly with parallel. It took all the advantage out of the.
Oh, that's awesome!
That's cool.
The box. Yeah, it was not planned at all, because it was way older than the parallel, but it turns out it was working nice. I take it. I did some adjustments to get an extra, but like the core was there already, so it was really nice surprise, honestly.
So do you find, because you're in the same space in terms of providing rigging systems, do you find that a lot of people who are looking for like a one-stop shop, I don't want to hire a bunch of creature TDs, can I have a rigging system, please? Are you finding that small and medium size companies that you're supporting?
Well, my case is a little different. I work for Studio Anima here in Tokyo, and the project, it's an open source project. So basically, it was started by my supervisor back in the day, Jeremy Passerin. He's now the rigging sup at Blur Studio, but he stopped the development on that when he went to Blur. So it was in Softimage, and then we moved it to Maya. And I took over last 10 years, not 10 years, but almost like 8, no, not that long, maybe 7 years or something that I've been working on that. And it's open source. You can download it. It's MIT license. It has his own custom nodes also, like for parts like arms or things like that. You already have like a node that give you everything and things like that. But I don't give support, so I have the forum. I try to help, and there is other developers now that also help a lot on the project, like Jerome or Chris. They're also helping on the forum. And but yeah, I don't know. Some studios contact asking for some like help, and I try to help, but it's not like something I do like to get like as a professional service or anything,
Right. Okay.
Right.
I don't charge for this. So
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So very professional as much as I can, but it's not...
yeah.
Well, I just know that Endgear is basically becoming the de facto standard for rigs. When people want to create a rig and they don't have an internal system or they don't have the knowledge, that's the tool set they go for. We did a job a while ago where we got told like, well, if you need inspiration, we like M-Gear. So
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can get it, you can chop it. You don't need even to share the code. I mean, you can build your stuff on top of this, and it's yours. I mean, you can even sell it if you want. I mean, it's up to you what you do.
Well, yeah, I remember watching a bunch of videos, and so yeah. There is definitely something right there, because if you think about it, there are a lot of options that you can find online, but it's basically M-Gear is becoming the Photoshop of rigging. It's like,
no,
if people, well, I see more than one company that they speak very highly of it. So
cool. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know who is using it, because also I don't control the download, so I don't know. I know only the people who contact or I see some videos, or like like maybe in Vimeo or something. I see a screen grab or something, but that's all. But sorry, I don't want to go on a tangent with Gear. I have tendency. I want to talk about your tools. This is your episode is for you guys. Sorry for that. Yeah, I'm gonna cut this section. No, I'm not gonna cut this section, but sorry. Let's go back to your tool, please, because I'm very interested to go, and maybe can you maybe, I don't know how long we've been in the podcast already. So do you feel like to go jump in a little demo or to go and explain some of the videos how it's working?
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. In fact, I think that we can even start from this one. This is the video itself is not the most polished one, but that's what I had hanging around and very clearly demonstrate the advantage. If you look here, there are two characters that are supposed to do the same motion. That is inspired by Elvis down here. And it is something that wasn't really, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but when we started thinking about the bidirectional constraint in general, we weren't thinking about all the other ramification all the other advantages you get. But one of the things that we realize is that you don't have controller drift. Like here, you'll see if I play, the green character has a typical foot rig, and because of the limitation of Maya works, there are certain motion where a controller is left behind here, and so then when you have to pivot on the heel of the foot again, now your pivot is in the wrong place. and
yes,
and then you're in trouble, and you have to use all these techniques to realign things instead of just continue your animation. And I remember talking to the animator that did this clip here. He was almost in tears. He was like, "This thing is beautiful because I don't have to fight
yeah,
the controllers anymore. In fact, I just have to relearn my way to animate because in the years I developed all this workaround, and now I don't have
yes,
to use them. I can just animate." And he
yeah,
was very excited about it. I mean, this is
yeah,
not final animation or final anything, but
mhm, yeah,
they demonstrate
yeah.
clearly one of the advantages.
Yeah, I see clear here because the famous IKFK baking systems and all these
Mm-hmm.
gimmick to realign control so you
Yeah.
can keep working on the right space, no? Let's say and the same for the food. Yeah, I see this happening all the time. Like you move there, the first 3-5 movements are great, then your pivots are all drifted and
And then
Yes.
you
all
have to manage the keys for
I,
each one, right? And that
yeah.
and then they spend what we always found fascinating about the animation workflow from an animator's mind
Mhm.
is I'm trying to animate just a simple walk cycle, and yet I'm constantly being taken out of my animation context when I hit play because I have to put
Yeah.
back these hierarchies and these control structures. And then we did, to what you mentioned earlier about like splitting out the rig into different, parts. And we've tried that. And at the end of the day, I hate that term, but anyways, animators still, I think today, are
Mhm.
still faced with an animation workflow that consistently takes them out of their context, and that's very difficult when you're dealing with movement,
Yeah.
timing,
Yeah.
posing, maybe less so, but you really want people to stay in
Yeah.
as much of their context as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
And one thing just like thinking while you're talking is like your tool, like it's called we calling him like constraint, but indeed you can do like a full rig with your tool. It's not like constraint because constraints sounds like something that it's specific for certain points
mm,
on the structure, no? Or unless
that's a good point.
sorry?
That's an excellent point. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, because it's not like I mean, you can say constraint because the people will understand clearly. It's constraint. It's attaching one thing to another. It's making one
Mm.
thing slave another when you move. I mean, that concept, it's like a constraint. But in terms of like possibilities, like I mean, you can do a full rig with full behavioral structure, like full biped, for instance, with your tool. Like, can
Well,
you? Or
Huh.
I don't know if that is something that makes sense. A few years ago, we try when we were at KMD. KMD used the exo switch constraint,
Mhm.
and one day I assigned one of the rigger the task of just rig an entire characters, just to see what it would happen. And what we notice is that there is one extra layer that you need to put on top to get something that may look like a complete, system. If you have HIK in mind, right? Okay, I
Mhm.
constrain all of these things so the entire system know about being together, and now I can just grab an arm and pull it down, and the character is gonna crunch down. You're not gonna get that out of the exo switch constraint.
Mhm.
You can get stuff like my character is standing, and now I want to grab the head and I want to put it in camera, and I don't care where the pelvis are. We did that a lot because that was because we did a lot of head tracking,
Mhm.
and so we didn't really care where the pelvis were. We just want to grab the head and put it exactly in that place in frame, because we had match move data coming from a plate, and that was convenient because if you connect the head with the rest of the body through a bidirectional constraint like the exo switch constraint, then you just say like drive it from the head. You grab the head, you put it whatever you want, the pelvis and the legs and everything else is just gonna go wherever it has to go for the head to be in the right place.
I see. Yeah, but but also this example that you have here for the foot, it's very clear the advantage of using it for the foot, maybe arms, legs, and maybe keep like the main torso and let's say the main global space or something like.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like a more like classical, and then in the limbs you can apply your constraint, your tool to specific areas. So
yeah, absolutely.
Good balance.
Do you have the video with the foot where the ball, like we set up the mask?
Yeah, I think I was playing it earlier.
Where was it?
Is it this? Let me see.
It's the ball.
No,
I don't recall to see a ball.
Let me see. I think we can pull it up from here.
Because what that one was trying to show was you basically to what you were saying earlier, Miguel, is about rigging. Like it's not really a constraint because you can rig it. So you can set up like when this object is driving, is the driver, and it's rotating an X, then this is how anybody who's connected from a driven perspective is supposed to operate. So what's nice is like if you look at like a foot and the complexity of movement there, you basically have these controllers that are in parallel, that are in the main pivot locations, and then you have one constraint.
I brought it up, Tim, so he's playing right now.
Yeah, so there's only one constraint that deals with the entire foot, just one constraint, which is nice because from a hierarchical perspective, you've got a parallel hierarchy, so that's easy from a rigging perspective. From a speed perspective, you only have one constraint. And what you do is right here, there's this little masking UI where you use this interface to basically say, when this controller is the driver of the entire system, but when it rotates, in X, I don't want it to affect the controllers in the front. Like, so the toe pivot, I don't want it to affect at all. But I want the heel and the two pivots, on either end of the heel, I want those to come with me. Whereas anytime I grab another controller, I want it to affect the entire system. So it's kind of nice about it. I guess you're right. It's not, it is a constraint, but it's not a constraint because you can put all of these rigging centric conditionals of like, if it's transforming in this way, here's what the relationship should look like. If it's transforming this other way, now so there's this relationship switching and contextual information that you can set up. That's why we say you can rig the constraint. So you can say if I'm translating in Y, here's these controllers don't move, but these controllers move in Y with me. Is where if we tried to build that kind of relational connection between nodes in a normal my rigging setup, our hierarchy would get bloated. It'd be very difficult to manage.
If I've been asked for that, I'm gonna cry.
Very difficult to debug. Like if it broke, probably the author of the rig would have to sit next to someone and try to figure out, what the animator did or how the connection failed or whatever.
And that's the reason, like we have different like switchers from IK, FK, and so on, also for the foot. It's because if you have to put everything together, it's gonna be a nightmare. Sorry, I didn't.
That's why we this was one of Brett Clark's suggestion about masking it so that you could have, you could split out. You've got basically 6 channels to work with that you could rig it in a bunch of different ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a little bit of the.
Yeah, definitely. I have to try it. Sorry, guys. Shame on me. I didn't try your tool.
No worries. No, absolutely no problem. We are about to release a new a new version that is we sped it up quite a bit, and we did a bunch of fixes and improvement. It seems that people got particularly captured by IK and FK switching, and so we did some work to make it a little bit more intuitive on that point of view, even easier and more robust. So there is a new version coming very soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of the future, are you guys planning to do more tools, or you gonna keep working on this one and do your service? I don't know if I can ask or if you can talk about that. Sorry, but
there's definitely
I'm
some
very
other
curious.
tools we've been working on. We've got something that we're developing now. We don't know when we're going to finish because we've got a lot of other stuff going on. But doing spines and long limbs and tails and ropes has always been a real challenge, and there's so much setup stuff. So what we're building is basically a flexible spine solution that has a number of different solvers within it in terms of polynomial kind of stuff. So one of the things that we realize with how bad controller drift can get in a spline based system, that you really want the controllers to always be going through the curve, or the curve actually reverse, the curve actually always going through the controllers. So we're so used to dealing with NURBS things, but if you build a Clark curve or a cardinal or whatever, we're trying to get rid of that controller drift. So you can, the idea being, if everything was hidden except for the controllers, would I visually be able to know that the silhouette of the character would run through that imaginary fit? So that's kind of what we're trying to take what we learned about controller drift and the principles of trying to remove that from a rig setup, and we're trying to apply that to spline based setups. We're also looking into how machine learning has kind of affected a bunch of things. And how to get it into, like, where's the application, if so, into a lot of different rigging applications. Looking at that stuff scares the you-know-what out of me. But,
yeah, the posing system. Do you saw this Cascador software? They have this like machine learning pose system.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I found an article, and they point to some papers and some also the kind of like the base code that they're using. It's available on GitHub, and I was just toying around a little bit, just researching. I don't have too much time, but I would love to implement something like that also in my rigs. Like, I don't know if it works for all the situations, and the biggest problem, it's like you need a lot of data to ingest to train.
That seems to be the problem, the limitation more than the problem with AI these days, machine learning, is that you need the training data is gargantuous most of the time. But maybe it'll get solved soon, and it's gonna be like even more useful. While we talk, I'm just playing this other old video that we recorded a while ago, where you can see another usage of the constraint. That is more like constraint like, because basically you just constrain three things together, right? The two wrists and the cube, and then you just animate who's driving what, and you get the effect of these two guys passing the cube to each other, which could be a sword or whatever else. But it is something else that it may get a little hard to do otherwise.
Well, there's more and more character interactions now that we have so many characters in film or games that are fighting each other or pushing on each other. There's a lot of back and forth between characters. There were so many movies when we were starting, just had one character, right, that was doing something. Now there's so much interaction between characters. It's still, when there's not that many systems that make it easy, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, now the movies are more and more like almost animation feature films more than VFX.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
full
yeah.
sequences, it's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm sorry, guys. I think we are reaching around 1 hour, and I hate to got you like this, but do you want to add or to comment something else where the people can find you and where they can get your tools and contact you if they need things like
Oh,
that?
yeah, well, the easiest thing is you see it right here is exotool.net, and there is a product link up there, and there is also the link to the constraint there. You can just download the free trial. Right now is only available for Maya 2018, but by the time we release the new version, we'll make sure that it support 2018 as well. It's also on the Autodesk App Store. I believe that is like this. Oh, it is not.
It's apps with S at the end.
Oh,
I think you have the link there. Maybe
yeah, there
let's see
you
what
go.
is.
Yeah, it was there. So it's also there. That's another easy way to get it. And then the other Exotool services are just available on demand. You reach out to us on the website. I think there is a contact right there, and we'll be able to get back to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you so much, team.
Thank
Also,
you.
and Andrea,
Appreciate your
for your
time.
time.